Hi, I'm Marty Grisani, and this is The Marty Grisani Show. As a full-time real estate investor and business owner, I have a real fascination of finding the key principles for business success and personal development. This show is a reflection of my personal mission to find out what truly makes somebody successful in business and in life. We will find tools and tactics that they've used to reach those levels. If you're the type of person is not satisfied with average and you have a hunger for learning that will never cease, this show is for you. Welcome to the show.
And what's up, guys? We're back. The Marty Grisani Show. Another solo episode. I hope you've gotten comfortable with just me. I am working on some really good guests for 2025. But in the meantime, it's just you and me today. I'm really excited about what's happening in 2025. I'll put it to you that way. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those things. Before I do, again, this is the Marty Grisani Show. We are all things real estate investing, business ownership, life. And part of the excitement for 2025 is, I haven't really announced this. It's really just between my partners and I, but, I am starting a commercial management and real estate brokerage. So I'm really excited about that. And it's something that will allow us to better serve not just our clients, but, when I'm doing marketing, which I'd like to think I'm one of the few that do as a commercial broker. You see a lot of these brokers that are just super under the radar, and that's because it's worked for them. They've had years and years in the business where they've not had to advertise. And I'm of the thought that the more people that know, the better. And the more people that know about the property you're listing, the better. The more people that are aware of you, the better. Because the more people that you can serve and the more people you can help. So really excited about that. Working on a name. Don't have that quite yet. It is coming. I do have some ideas. But yes, excited about the commercial real estate brokerage that we are starting. And very excited about the management services that we're going to be able to offer. My partner, Matt, is a absolute stud when it comes to operations and management. And we have a wonderful team that is able to serve those clients that, are in need of construction, and whether it's build out, whether for me and Matt, the leasing and the brokerage side. But really excited about that. Not the reason for the show, but I thought I would mention that as one of the things we're excited about for 2025. What we're going to be talking about today is two things. I have a bunch of questions that the members of the Upstate New York Real Estate Investors Association have. I've kind of wrote them down, and I thought I would just answer them here and answer them to everyone. And then this can be used to, certainly share if you ever get that question, or if someone's getting a question and you don't know the answer. Well, hopefully this will be right on the Facebook page so that people can just tag, this episode. And the second thing I'm going to talk about, which has been a game changer from our company, is the use of virtual assistants. So let's talk about virtual assistants and, what they can do for you. So I have a fantastic team of virtual assistants that I've been working with since 2017. And that was, at that time, wasn't super common to work with a virtual employee, a consultant from a different country. My team is in the Philippines, and like I said, they are fantastic. And what they do, and kind of to help with your thought, with how can I leverage and work with a VA and not have to necessarily hire somebody onshore, is, for me, data cleanup. Okay, we have so many leads that we are trying to get in contact with, which might have the wrong phone number, the wrong address. It might just be old information. And I need them to cross-check it with what is out there on the official government county websites, right? That's really where you can find the most up-to-date and the most clear information. So that is one tool. When you are scraping data, right? When you're exporting data out of wherever you pull your data, you can then, for me, I wasn't great at Excel, still not. They can format it and put it into the right form so that you can upload it into your, whether it's your call system, whether it's your mailing system, your texting system. And those are all things that I've talked with in the past, but those are things that, you got to still get that data, right? In order to, put it into those systems to, reach out and talk and to get deals and work with folks. So, that's one area. Another area where we use and work with our team is through, probably the biggest thing is through our outreach, right? So we have our inbound marketing, and that's usually like through Google or through mailers, right? Where someone's actually calling you, Facebook, the podcast, where someone's going to reach out to us. And then you have your outbound, which is where, I'm really going to just hit the pavement, right? I'm going to knock on doors. I'm going to, when I do my cold calling, I'm going to reach out, right? So our virtual assistants, they can't door knock, but they can call. And really, they are the most important piece to our company. It really is critical. The virtual assistants, the cold calling, the sales associates that we have, because they're the first impression to your company. Okay, I'll say that again. Your virtual assistants or your cold calling, and whether it's you or somebody else, that is the first impression to your company. So you really need to have a strong initial handshake to that business or individual that you're speaking to, so that they feel confident that they're going to be working with somebody that is able to get the job done. It's really important. I really stress this to my team, that they have the most critical job of one of the most critical parts of our organization, because they are not just the handshake, but they're and not just the first impression, but they're the ones that are in the trenches, going through and making sure that they hand off the baton from that initial phone call to us. And you want that to be a very clean, warm handoff, so that you can take it to the finish line, which is get the deal. And that is something that is a big deal to us. So, part of where I see a lot of failures when someone, an investor or a business or a real estate agent, decides to hire virtual assistants for their cold calling, is that they've never actually done it themselves. So you may have expectations that are just not real, or they're not something that you've done yourself. It's super hard to teach something to somebody unless you have experience with it. And, one of the ways to learn is you got to do it, right? So before you hire a virtual assistant for your sales, your outbound marketing, you should really do it yourself. You should at least make 1,000 calls, so that when you do hire the team or the individual or the company to handle this for you, you know what you're paying for, which is cold calling. It is a full-on contact sport, and it is not for the weak of heart, and it is for people that are willing to get in there and do the work. That's what this is. Cold calling is, it's not just reaching out to people. It's, did you get the right phone number? Did you, make sure that you had the right information? Did you have the right address? Did you have the right person on the phone that you were talking to? There's so many things that go into it before you even get to the person that answers the phone. So you really want to make sure you have all the data lined up first. But yeah, cold calling is super critical for us. It's been a driver for our business. And it's something that we actually, crazily enough, my partner Matt and I enjoy. We like doing it. It's what we did for 8 years in our previous life as over-the-phone salespeople. And it's something where if you do hire it out, you should know what you're doing or know what you're going to be teaching your, cold calling agents that are going to be working with you, right? So you want to have the right scripts and all these things that, we've honed over the years. All right. So that's the VAs and a couple places to find them. You would want to go to either Upwork, which you can find virtual assistants, and also you can go to a forum, like a job forum, like onlinejobs.ph. That's another area to find virtual employees. Okay, so those are some VA information, and I have the questions here that I was given, and so let's just get right to it. Okay, number one, how do I choose the best real estate strategy for my financial goals? Buy and hold, fix and flip, or wholesaling? Well, that would depend on your financial goals. And I would say, a lot of people get into real estate, at least from what I've seen, and they think they're going to start wholesaling first, and then they're going to fix and flip, and then they're going to buy and hold. That might be the hardest way to get started in real estate. I think wholesaling is the hardest thing to do in real estate. Now, if you do it and you can get good at it, then everything else is simpler because, finding that deal or finding that property and buying it at 50 to 60 cents on the dollar, you then have a lot of room for error. And that's a great thing, especially if you're like me, where in the beginning and so don't get me wrong, to this day, there's, you find yourself in some issues but because you bought right, you can get out of those things because like in real estate, you make your money when you buy, not necessarily when you sell. Hopefully you make money both ways. So to answer the question, what I would say, what probably helped us a lot is we flipped it around. We actually bought, buy, and hold first, and then we started fix and flip, and then we started wholesaling because of the leads that we had. So I kind of knew already what exactly folks wanted, other investors wanted. So I knew how to wholesale a lot better, but that wasn't really the question. It's how do I choose the best real estate strategy for my financial goals? I guess it would just depend on your financial goals. And if you are someone, if you're someone who needs cash, wholesaling is probably the most effective. And it's I would say the least, you can wholesale with the least amount of money out of your pocket, because what you can do, and I've talked about this before in other episodes, you can drive for dollars, which is still super effective. You can go to neighborhoods, or you can go to zip codes, take that zip code that is a very hot zip code, like here it's 14609, and you can pick pockets of 14609 and say, okay, on Saturday, I have a 3-hour window and I'm going to drive this 2 miles or this mile, this half a mile, and I'm going to write down all of the addresses that look like they're distressed properties. And that would be what I would do if you're like someone who goes, I need some cash now. That's what I would do. I wouldn't go into fix and flip, not in 2025. I would not do that. I would find the deal and then I would assign it to a fix and flipper. Okay. If you're someone who has got a great W-2 and has got some money in the bank, but wants to diversify and learn real estate and become a landlord, because that's what you will be doing, I would buy a rental, but I would have that wholesale mindset of, hey, I want to buy a good deal, and then I want to rent it, and I'm looking to have cash flow. And the rule of thumb is generally you want to make about $150 to $200. Really, that's you really want to be at $200 pure snorting cash flow every month after your expenses, right? So you really want to make sure you know all your numbers. And then you want to make sure that rent, when you take that all off, and I'm talking about, maintenance and everything and vacancy, you want to add all those things where after everything, it's a $200 a month per door that's coming in. It takes a long time. I don't think you're not going to get rich overnight. Real estate it's not a get rich quick scheme, but it's a get rich for sure if you do it. And, if you're somebody who's got a long-term mindset, which is really what you want to have in real estate, whether you wholesale, fix or flip or buy rentals, having that long-term mindset, because, this is a small world. And not just Rochester being a small world, not just upstate being a small world. Real estate in general is a small world. There's, with all these Facebook groups and all these groups, like, you kind of know who's doing deals. So you really want to make sure you have a great reputation in the industry. And this is kudos to Amber and my partner Matt and Ryan and Jeff and everybody on our team, that when we do a fix and flip, our flips we will overspend. We typically always go over budget. And, that's probably not the right thing to say, but it's true. But it does come back because, at the end of the day, I think people value quality. And especially when times are a little tougher, which they are in 2025, where, people aren't just going hundreds of thousands of dollars over asking, they have more choices now. And you better be somebody who has had a track record of delivering quality, so that when there is a choice to be made between your property and another one, that agent says, hey, these people do a really good job and I would trust them over somebody else. So we kind of went crazy on that question. Let's keep it rolling. But again, just to double down on that before we move on, I would say stay away from fix and flip, wholesaling if you need cash, and investment property if you have some money and you are just looking to grow it, but you have a long-term mindset and are okay with, growing a portfolio. I would just say do not hire a property manager until you have about 10 properties, because you really should know what you're doing. You should learn to be a landlord. You should be okay with being a landlord. You should know some of the laws, and then you should feel really, really good when you do hand it over to a property manager. All right. How do I build a solid team, contractors, property managers, lenders, to support my real estate business? Yeah, networking, going to events, going to meetups. We have a meetup every month, the Upstate New York Real Estate Investors Association's great meetup, and that's a great place. There are property managers there. There are agents there. There are lenders there. There are contractors there. So the people that usually go to these places are traditionally long-term mindset folks, because they're willing to invest their time in going to places to not automatically guarantee a return, right? They're going because they want to add value. They're going because they want to learn. And if it happens that, there's business that's done there, fantastic. But that's not necessarily the reason they're going. They're going to see what they can do to add value, answer questions, and then because they were the laws of the universe, if you are willing to give, you are most likely going to get, but you have to give in order to get. So I would say, just to kind of rattle through these questions a little faster than that first one, is to go to networking and go to different events. What are some common mistakes new investors make, and how can I avoid them? Shoot, even though I knew the mistakes and pitfalls, I still made them. And for a lot of you, you'll have to make them too. And I hope that's not true, but that is, for me, sometimes that's kind of the route that you kind of got to learn through your own mistakes, because that's where the magic is. When you make a mistake, you learn from it, you don't do it again. But I would say the most common mistake is buying on a pro forma, okay? And what I mean by that is you're looking at a property and you're looking at a pro forma, which is what the property could make if everything was perfect. And some performers are different, but generally what you're going to see when you're looking at a deal and the agent has a pro forma there, it's going to be like if best case scenarios, right? So the rent's always paid on time, the maintenance is always at a certain percentage, vacancy is always 100%, no vacancy, 100% filled. So all these different things that, sometimes don't always happen. Sometimes there is a furnace that needs to be repaired. Sometimes there is rent that's not paid. Sometimes so again, not to scare anyone, but these are the realities of investing. It's investing. It's not guaranteed. So you kind of just want to make sure when you're looking at it that you are being conservative with your underwriting and not just buying based on pure the pro forma. You want to plug in your numbers and make sure that they're realistic and conservative. Again, on that is when I'm saying buying based on the pro forma. Well, sometimes people will buy and they will look at the numbers and say, okay, this can't lose, even though they're not looking exactly at the location of these properties. You know, when we first started, we were not aware of certain areas of Rochester, and we would, you know, just buy in pockets that we probably shouldn't have bought in. And those were learning lessons that, you know, we ended up selling, but you don't want to buy based on this crazy cash flow that you're seeing, because a lot of times that's not true, because you are going to have issues with the age of the property. You know, the locations may not always give that, they might not always attract the best tenants that in the world. So you just want to be cognizant of those things, and you want to make sure that even though some areas the cash flow looks less, well, your headaches will be less, and your property might be a little bit more updated, and it might just be a better deal for you long term than just that short term. Looks like on paper it's going to make a bunch of money, and then it just doesn't end up being that way. So you want to buy in really B+ areas, and if you don't know those areas, you should drive them. You should make sure that you are extremely familiar. When I first started, I would just drive all areas of Rochester to become extremely familiar in those zones, those geographical zones. Mostly because if there was a deal and someone said, "Hey, XYZ Street," I wanted to make sure I was familiar with it, so I could act upon it very quickly. So I wanted to be somebody who is an expert in the areas of Rochester to know where to buy and where not to buy. And I wanted to be an expert in where not to buy, because I wanted to make sure I knew, hey, that part is a little too close to this part. And so I want to make sure that I am steering away, because it's not going to be long-term successful for my investment thesis, and whatever thesis that is for you. All right, let's keep moving. What's the best way to finance my first deal if I don't have much capital? I would say that's a great question. And I would say in 2025, that's going to be seller financing. And seller financing, I had a whole episode on that not too long ago, but essentially you're going to work with the seller and they're going to be the bank. You are going to figure out terms that work for you. And, you know, maybe they have a price that's a little higher, and that's fine. Your price, my terms. Sure, I'll buy something that is even above market value if it's at my terms, and maybe that looks like there's no money down. Maybe that's just I'm making a monthly payment. Maybe that's, hey, you know, interest only for a year. Maybe that's you're going to amortize this over a 10-year period at a, 4.5%, 5% interest rate. Remember the 5-5-5 rule, right? So you really want to make sure that in 2025, because the interest rates are so crazy, my first line of attack, you can do a deal at any time, but the seller would have to hold the note. And obviously do your homework and making sure that the deal would work, but that's a really great way to get started on your first deal. So I would become a ninja on YouTube to figure out and watch every single seller finance video. That's what I did when I first started. I wanted to know the ins and outs on seller financing. And then I would want to, every conversation I'm talking to a seller, I'd want to bring that up. And a lot of times you're going to have to educate them on that. And you'd be surprised. Most sellers are very open to it. Okay, this is a question. What's the 1% rule, and does it apply in today's market? Sure, the 1% rule is essentially if you are, let's say, and a lot of times you want to be above the 1% rule. But the 1% rule is essentially if you buy, let's just make it easy, a $100,000 property, the rent should be $1,000. So that is 1% of the purchase price. So whatever you are going to be buying a property for, generally the rule is you want to make 1% of that in monthly gross rent. So a lot of times though, in Rochester, in upstate New York, you can find 1.5%, 2%. But you have to make those deals. They don't just come to you. You have to usually negotiate for those deals, and you have to, probably a lot of times put in money into the property in order to get that to come to fruition on that 2%. But that's okay, especially if you are buying the property right. But yeah, if you're buying a $100,000 house, the 2% rule would be then you should be getting about $2,000 a month in rent. Trust me, I get it. Sounds like it might be tough in 2017, 18, 19, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 18. Those were everywhere. A little bit harder to find, a lot harder to find now, but those are deals that can be found, and those are deals that you have to make. You're not going to see those on the MLS. Those are going to be off market and properties that you contact and work that through your off market strategy. Okay, how do I scale from owning 1 or 2 rental properties to managing a portfolio? Your team. And a big part of that is your financing and the funding, right? So you're going to, after you buy 1 or 2, you may have been using your own money for those initial 2 properties. I would highly suggest that you make inroads and have connections with lenders, primarily private lenders, family members, people that you know that want to be in real estate but are more interested in the funding of real estate, where they can get a first lien mortgage, first lien on the position of the property, and they have that protection because they're protected by that hard asset, and they're getting an interest rate, anywhere from, 9 to 12 to 14, 16%, right? Depending on your level of credibility and your experience and, your funds that you have. So that's going to depend, but that's how you can really grow, is if you have either a partner or an investor who's willing to work with you as a lender, and you can really scale that. You can scale your business. Again, you still got to buy right. You still got to find the right deals, and you got to make sure they're going to cash flow, or, especially professional lenders are not going to lend on that if it doesn't make sense. And you don't want to set up a private lender for something like that. They're really the limited partner, if you think about it, in your general partnership. So you want to ensure that you are still buying extremely right before you are taking on other people's money. But OPM, other people's money, is how you grow that portfolio to become someone who's managing a large portfolio. How do I navigate local landlord-tenant laws to protect myself legally? I see a lot of people from time to time are trying to do this stuff on their own, and don't. You need to hire a real estate attorney. You need to work with attorneys, because these laws are constantly changing, and they are cumbersome, and it's really it's a great thing for attorneys. All these laws are just fantastic for real estate attorneys. And, they might say, this isn't right. And I know that my real estate attorney is not exactly happy that this is happening to landlords, where there's a lot of laws that are really making it where it's becoming a lot tougher to be a landlord. But yeah, just hire a real estate attorney. They will walk you through the laws with the understanding that you're going to use them as a real estate attorney. So don't expect someone just to take a ton of time with you. You want to make sure that, hey, if you just bought something they're your closing attorney, make sure that they do, or somebody in their office does evictions or does, leases, or, works on those types of things, so that they're feeling like, okay, this is going to be a win-win. I'll give them, let's do the coffee so I can explain to you this situation. But when there is an issue that comes up, you should be using a real estate attorney. There's no reason in 2025 that you should be doing anything in regards to any issues. Now, you should be aware of the laws, and that's great. but you're not an attorney. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're an investor, and you really want to be focusing on finding the next best deal. Any issues that arise, contact your real estate attorney. Fix and flip. How do I find undervalued properties with potential for flipping? So, great question. Again, it's really going to come down to what is your off-market strategy. Yes, can you find deals on the MLS to flip? Sure. But you should have an off-market strategy. You should be, again, time or money. Which one do you have? Which one do you want to allocate? If you want to allocate time, driving for dollars, networking, talking to landlords who might be a little bit long in the tooth and asking them, hey, do you have some properties that may need some work that you haven't gotten to? Talking to property managers who, not always, but they might be willing to say, hey, look, this guy is actually interested, or this girl is interested in potentially an offer. Let me see if I can connect you to. And, those are things that work. Some of these property managers have clients that don't want to put a dime into their properties, and they don't want to manage those properties. They want to work, a successful property manager wants to work with a successful investor, and they don't want to have issues with, their client not getting C of Os and having violations, because it honestly makes them look bad. But again, they can't put in the money to fix the property. They're managing it based on what the owner is, willing to do, what they thought, hey, this is your investment vehicle. You should be treating it like it's the most important thing, because it really is. It's your, for a lot of people, it's your retirement. So again, contact property managers. I think that's a really untapped resource right now where you can reach out. There's so many property managers, and a lot of them, unfortunately are not doing very well because of the laws. There's probably quite a few that they have a book of business of clients that are also hurting, that are willing to offload these. They just need a nudge. And so nudge them. But that's a great way of finding them. And I could go forever on that, but we got a couple more questions here. What's the best way to market a flipped property for a quick sale? So, yeah, you're going to want to have an agent. You're not going to want to FSBO this thing, right? You're not going to want to just put it on Facebook Marketplace. Have an agent. When I first started, I didn't understand the value of an agent until I took the real estate licensing class, until I took the exam. Agents deserve the money they get, plain and simple. It is hard. It is bloody. It's war at times, I don't want to know the phone calls and back and forth that Amber's had to do for us over the years. It's a lot. So what I would say, if you want to sell something quick, hire the right agent. That's that. And with the right agent, they're going to want you to do certain things so that it's marketed properly, right? Staging, buying the appliances new. I see some people that don't buy appliances, and I see people that don't stage. And I just think that you don't want to give anyone a reason not to buy. You want to give them every single reason. You don't want to have any doubt, right? In sales, you want to be a doubt destroyer in everything you do. And marketing of a property is another way to destroy doubt. And you want to do it the proper way by just the two things: new appliances and having it staged. And then the last couple of questions here. Wholesaling. What is the best way to build a buyer's list as a wholesaler? I think the best wholesalers, and I could be completely wrong, I'm not a wholesaler. We did it, and we occasionally still do because we have a lot of leads. I would rather work with quality 5 to 10 buyers. So many wholesalers, when they start out, this is like their number one priority, is like build a buyer's list. And while I'm not going to completely knock it, I would say focus on building a seller's list and getting a CRM full of sellers that you've seen through your driving for dollars or through your nudges to property managers to your networking, when you're talking to some, long-term owned rental properties, that you build that list up. And because a lot of times, most people are not going to sell after that first phone call, that first meeting, that first initial touch. You have to maybe touch or call or nudge 7 times before you're given a real opportunity. So I would really focus on building that list and not a buyer's list. A buyer's list, I would really talk to other fix and flippers who are really doing it in your community. Focus on your seller's list, not so much on your buyer's list. Your buyers will come. The sellers are really the ones that are really the tougher ones to initiate. How do I negotiate deals with sellers effectively when wholesaling? So, what I think is a really good strategy for 2025 is reverse wholesaling. And what I mean by that is if I have a lead, okay, so you got to at least have the start of having a lead. And that could just be somebody that has a property on 123 Main Street. Well, then I would want to talk to an investor, a fix and flipper, buy and hold individual who likes 123 Main Street. And then I would say, hey, I'm working this lead. You have to have trust. But what would be the number you would need in order to get this at, right? So now I'm already starting with a number from them to then go to that seller and then work off of that number. You can be spinning your tires when you're reaching out to a lead, getting a number, and then you go back to that buyer, the fix and flipper, the investor, and then they go, there's nothing here. When you start with the end buyer in mind, your job becomes a lot simpler because you may not have to negotiate. You may be able to find what it is on how much they're willing to spend, and then going into that lead and then basically having an arbitrage number and getting that, and then still being able to offer exactly what that seller wanted. Done it hundreds of times that way. Like I said, I think quality over quantity. I have a quality 5 to 10 buyers that I work with, and I don't have the brain power or time, just because I do a number of different fields of real estate where I really just want to know, are you going to close this, right? A lot of times when you have such a big buyer's list, you can't really vet that buyer that effectively. So when you are working off of what you think is going to be a buyer, and then they don't end up being able to perform, that is the worst thing you can possibly do, because not only are you letting down the seller, and it's probably, if you have a contract, now you get into the legal world of what you were supposed to do by performing on that contract. I'm not going to get into all that right now, but what I would say is reverse it. I know I said don't work on a buyer's list, but I would say, find the 5 to 10. Okay. That's it. 5 to 10. And then at the same time, you should be working that seller's list and then working from that buyer to that seller. You don't need many buyers. You just need a couple just to get this thing started. And last question, I got to get out of here. What habits or routines have helped you become a successful real estate investor, and how can others replicate them? It's a really good question. I think habits and routines are essential when you're trying to start something new, because you need momentum and you need to basically change in order to get something that you never had before, right? You can't just go into something with the same skills and even the same mindset to then being able to accomplish something that's different, like real estate investing. So some of the habits that I've taken on and in routines that I've done are, I would, first of all, have a calendar that you are scheduling your calling, right? So like, for instance, I would set up times in my calendar where, hey, from 10 to 12, I am just doing outreach. And what does that mean? Well, I'm calling the property managers for their leads of sellers and clients that might be interested in selling. I'm talking to banks who might have a workout they might have some issues with some of the people that they have mortgages with right now that are investors who are not performing. I might reach out to my network on the upstate New York real estate investors and just call people or reach out DM and say, hey, do you have anything that you might be interested in selling? Or do you know someone who is? And then I would do my drive for dollars, and I would build that list of, I would say 100 properties that look like they're distressed. I would then look them up in the county website, and then I would handwrite something to them, and I would make that, again, not at all one time, I would just schedule that Monday through Friday. Monday, I'm going to do my outreach to property managers and agents. Tuesday, I'm going to drive for dollars and build a list of 20. Wednesday, I'm going to then again reach out to my property managers. So you get what I'm saying? I'm scheduling out everything, and I'm in making sure it's repeated every single day, every single week, having that same schedule so that I'm building momentum. The consistency of doing it with the momentum of doing the work, you're going to get results. Okay. But one of the biggest things you need is that mindset that you can do this. And how you get to that mindset is you have to be willing to say, I am a successful real estate investor. You have to have already believed that you've already been there. I've already been somebody. And you do that because in your life, you want to look at things where there's evidence that you've done something that was new and then have done well at it, or because you stuck with it, you've had success with it, whether that's a sport, whether that's, learning a new language, whatever it might be. There is evidence in your life where you've done something new and have had success with it because you were consistent. So that transfers quite well over into real estate because it's something new, but you have to be consistent with the actions you're taking. So I just gave you some actions that you can take that you can be consistent with, where after time, and oh, by the way, brainwashing yourself by telling yourself, I am a successful real estate investor, you will start pushing, I keep saying this, you will push this boulder up the hill, and then it will start really going fast downhill in a good way. So anyway, that's the last question I can do today. I love you. I really appreciate you listening. If you do listen, that's amazing. If it doesn't hurt you, share this. Okay? If it doesn't affect you very much, maybe you put this on Facebook or somewhere on social media and you share it and you go and give us a rating, whether it's a 1-star rating or not. Maybe it is a 1-star. Maybe there's something I can change for you. But I think this question and answers are pretty cool. I really think this is a 5-star rated episode, so keep that in mind. But anyway, this is the Marty Grisani Show. I'm going to try to keep doing these on a more consistent basis. And that's it for now. I love you all. Take care.
Thank you for tuning into the Marty Grisani Show. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, leave us an honest rating and review. If you're on Spotify, make sure you follow us for weekly episodes.